Hello, my name's Ken Kinter, and I'm an assistant professor at Rutgers University. And the purpose of this presentation, it's the second of two videos on the stages of change. And as usual, my contact information is on the bottom of this first slide. Before we get started, I want to give a little credit where credit is due. I want to give a shout out to the New Jersey Department of Health. They have been funding our mission, and by our, I mean the State Hospital Psychiatric Rehabilitation Initiative, which is an effort by the Department of Health and by Rutgers University to improve conditions in New Jersey state psychiatric hospitals for both patients and staff. They've been helping us out with financial and other support for many years. We are grateful for that. That makes our mission possible. So we're going to follow up on the previous video. If you haven't seen the first video, you might want to go back and catch that one first, where we describe the stages of change. This one is going to be much more focused on strategies and interventions, and we'll have some additional resources as well. So hopefully you remember this slide from last time, the different stages of change. The previous video described everything from pre-contemplation through maintenance and also relapse. So let's get started with the strategies. Now, we've established that people in pre-contemplation don't feel that they have a problem. So how do we approach people that don't feel like they have a problem? Well, the first thing is to hear them out. This helps build the relationship, and it also gives you some information that you can use later when you're working with that client. So at the beginning, you want to get their version of the story. For example, we have a gentleman at our hospital who feels he's a member of the English royal family. So he doesn't feel that he has a mental illness. He feels that he has been incarcerated in a psychiatric hospital because of his, his delusional system. So we need to hear where this is before we can take this on, because he's just not going to spontaneously agree with us that he does have a mental illness. Don't push the agenda. We have information available, but don't force it. Because this stage is all about the relationship. Even if that person did have an idea about wanting to change, we don't have the credibility yet to facilitate them through that change. So we want to develop the relationship and then have information be made available if it's needed, but it's probably not needed yet. When we get to contemplation, again, this is the stage where a person's on the fence. They feel like they have a problem, but they don't know what to do about it, and they can kind of see the pros and cons on both sides of the scale. So here, all of that information that we have, we make that information available. We don't make the pitch for change, but we just start putting information down on both sides. A nice piece here is to see where does the problem conflict with the person. For example, just to pick the example of smoking, all right, person A might want to quit smoking because it's expensive. Person B may have lost someone close to them to a smoking-related illness. Person C may notice that they're just not in as good shape as they want to be, and person D may just be sick of the smell on their clothes and their hair. Wherever it clashes with the person, that's where you get some of the progress made. ABC stands for antecedent behavior and consequence. Even before making the change, they can journal the prevalence of the change in their life, what causes it, what good and bad come from it. So you encourage the person to actually investigate it themselves. And ultimately, what you want to make is a decisional balance where the argument to change is on this side, the argument to change is on the other. We actually have a really nice 2x2 version of a pro and con list. If you reach out to me, we can send that to you. And that's also in some of the motivational interviewing materials in subsequent trainings. So the preparation stage, this is where that person has to make a written plan. What is the plan to help them make this change? I love asking people the question, what will you have to give up to do this? That's a great point, because any positive change in your life, something has to be given up first. Another piece is, as was mentioned in the previous video, just because that person's saying they're ready to change doesn't mean they're ready. They're not ready until the plan is made. We make the argument that the blueprint needs to be written and finalized before you can build the house. You don't just start building a house. So it's not about speed here. It's about making a comprehensive plan in advance. How do we deal with the anxiety of change? Can we break this big change into smaller steps so that it's much easier to take on? What supports can we have to help that person has that can help them through this? And for me, that plan needs to be in written form. If it's just in my head, it's very easy to forget. So the action stage. Don't start until you're ready. This is a marathon, not a sprint. If you're looking forward to making a change in your life, it's not making a change right now. It's doing it right when it happens. What change myths does that person have? Is that person saying things to themselves that they don't have willpower, they don't change, or they failed before? The way we talk about change can be very destructive. For example, someone says, well, I need to lose 30 pounds. Okay, well, first of all, that's probably very difficult to do. Has the person ever done that before? Because if they haven't, then that lends credence to the idea that this may not be possible. The other things to ask about is, well, do you want to lose 30 pounds, or do you want to be at a healthy weight, or do you really want to lose a pound at a time and keep it off? Doesn't that sound a little better than just losing 30? Because not for nothing, but Oprah and I have both lost 30 pounds and then put that 30 back on again, and then you lose that same 30. It's not very helpful. So we talked about the written change plan, and now we put it into practice, and we're going to be tweaking that as we go. The main thing about the action stage for me is countering or substitution. All we're doing is replacing unhealthy habits with healthier changes. You take the thing out and you need to put something healthy back in its place, or the old thing comes right back in again. Or in the case of cross addiction, a person will get rid of one addiction and pick up another. Where is the energy going to go? What are they going to do with the stress that's caused by all of this? And substitution isn't just a matter of behavior. It's also a matter of substituting dysfunctional thinking. If a person has all these negative thoughts, or what they call in AA stinking thinking, we got to substitute those with affirmations too, because those thought processes will help bring somebody down and contribute to a relapse. So strategies in the maintenance stage: don't fix what ain't broke. What can you do to move this change forward in your life? A wise person once told me, if you're not moving forward in recovery or in your change, then you're backsliding. Don't disengage from supports. Lots of people go a year into a change process and then they're like, okay, I've got this. And then they take away everything that helped maintain that change. Build on that change. And then, of course, the last one on here is the 12th step, helping someone else with the same issue. So again, we've talked about all the process forward through the stages of change. Now we're talking about what happens when people drift back a little bit. First off, we have to plan for this right off the bat. While we're making the change plan, we say, look, few people change big things in their life the first time out. This takes a couple go-rounds. We affectionately refer to this as failing forward. When there is a relapse, we say, well, instead of blaming them or having them blame themselves, we say, look, this is a chance to improve the change plan. Let's blame the plan, and you can change the plan rather than blaming the person. I love asking, what else do you need to give up? Very difficult for people. A good example is people who are recovering from addictions very often need to give up their friends. If their friends use, that's not going to help them in this change effort. The myth of willpower. Willpower is a very interesting concept. When people are successful, they say they have willpower. When they're unsuccessful, they say they don't have willpower. The other trick is that willpower doesn't exactly have a location in the brain anywhere. One of the philosophical underpinnings of stages of change and motivational interviewing is that you have the impetus to change and the impetus to stay the same are doing battle with each other all the time. It isn't a matter of willpower. It's a matter of resolving the resistance or the ambivalence to change. Another piece: a lapse is not a relapse, a slip is not a fall. Just because you had that first cigarette doesn't mean we throw out the change plan regarding quitting smoking. Just because you may have had a slip in your diet doesn't mean we throw out the whole diet and the diet didn't work. How can we use those little slips, those little relapses, to make the relapse plan stronger? Another important piece of this is something called distress preceding relapse. In 12-step rooms, I've heard this referred to as HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, and tired, negative emotional states that contribute to relapse. I've even heard HALT expanded into HALT BS, which is hungry, angry, lonely, tired, bored, and stressed. They belong, right? So HALT BS. Very often those negative emotional states precede relapse. So if we can avoid those emotional states or find healthy options for when that person does get into those states, that can help reduce relapse. Again, we blame the plan and we fail forward. My favorite metaphor for failing forward is when you were a little kid learning how to play catch. The first time somebody threw you a ball, you probably didn't catch it. It probably hit you in the chest or the face and then hit the ground. And after a little while, you realized you had to get your hands involved in this whole process. And then after that, you learn how to catch. You learn how to catch by not catching. You learn how to ride a bike by falling off a bike. Not too much different from these other change initiatives that we have. So just to try to capture some of this in an overall scheme, this is where this map is. So this is kind of stage by stage what your tasks are. So in pre-contemplation, hear them out and get the why. Then that leads to contemplation. Find both sides of the balance, the reasons to change and the reasons to not change. And what have they tried before? I hate recommending something to somebody that they've already tried and then they say that didn't work. And then I'm right back to stage one again. Preparation, all of the specifics. What, when, where, how. How do I break this big job into a series of smaller tasks which have a more increased likelihood of completion? And I love to ask the question, how would this fail? I've worked in emergency services a long time. I always like to plan, hope for the best and plan for the worst. In action, here's where all our stuff comes into play, all the stuff that we've learned, the skill building, coping, social support, cognitive behavior, all this stuff is built for these stages. And in maintenance, build new changes on the successful change. The 12th step, as we mentioned before, helping someone else and then not withdrawing the social supports. So to summarize, each stage has its own sort of specific characteristics. They do kind of follow in a sequence, but people cycle through those stages, and that's to be understood. Each of these stages has one task to complete before moving on into the next. And again, repetition is very likely. I would ask you to take a look at major change initiatives that you've made in your own life to see how they fit into this. Where have you been in these different stages and how many times did you have to go through that loop? Think about it in terms of maybe relationships as an example of how many times have you gone through that loop before you got what you needed to get and changed what you needed to change. So these are the references. This is where this material came from. Changing for Good is a really good way at looking for stages of change for yourself in kind of a self-help style. Bill Miller presented the original versions of these slides and gave them out, which was very kind of him. So we give him thanks for that. We have a bunch of other videos regarding motivational interviewing and other topics along these lines. You can find them on the Rutgers State Hospital Psychiatric Rehabilitation Initiative website. You can also find them on my website, on my YouTube channel, Ken Kinter, and there will be more videos. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something out of this, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care.